The cargo ship shook violently as it fell through space. Maya Brooks gripped her seat and watched sparks fly from the control panel. She was only 16, but she had seen enough space flights to know this one was going very wrong. Emergency landing protocol activated, the ship's computer announced in a calm voice that didn't match the chaos around her. Brace for impact. Maya closed her eyes and held tight. The ship hit something hard, throwing her forward against her. Safety straps. Then everything went quiet. When she opened her eyes, smoke was filling the cabin. The emergency lights cast strange red shadows on the walls. Maya unbuckled herself and stumbled toward the exit. The door hissed open and she stepped out into a long metal corridor. She was supposed to be delivering supplies to a mining station near Jupiter. Her mom would be worried sick when the ship didn't arrive on schedule. But first, Maya needed to figure out where she was and how to call for help. The corridor stretched in both directions, lit by strips of white light on the ceiling. The walls were made of smooth metal and everything looked clean and new. This wasn't the old mining station she was supposed to visit. This place looked expensive. Maya picked a direction and started walking. Her footsteps echoed in the empty hallway. She called out, "Hello? Is anyone here?" But no one answered. She passed several doors, all sealed shut. Through small windows, she could see empty rooms filled with equipment she didn't recognize. Everything looked normal, but something felt wrong. Where was everybody? After walking for 10 minutes, Maya found a larger room with windows that looked out into space. She could see stars and a large planet with brown and red swirls. She had never seen this planet before. The ship's crash had brought her somewhere far from home. In the center of the room stood a tall computer terminal. Maya approached it carefully and touched the screen. It lit up with text in several languages. One of them was English. "Welcome to Research Station Kepler 442b, the screen read. "Current occupancy. 1 human female, age approximately 16 years. Classification. Unscheduled arrival." Maya frowned. How did the computer know her age just from looking at her? And why did it say unscheduled arrival like she was some kind of package? She touched the screen again, trying to find a communication system. Instead, she found something that made her blood run cold. The screen showed a map of the station with red dots moving through the corridors. Each dot had a label. Umbral Stalker. Razorclaw Pack Member. Mindrender. Whatever those things were, they were moving toward her location. Maya backed away from the terminal just as the lights in the room changed from white to red. An alarm started beeping softly. Then a voice filled the air, speaking in a language she didn't understand. But the computer terminal translated the words on its screen. Hunt initiated. Primary target identified. All hunters proceed to designated zones. Maya's heart started beating faster. She was the target. This wasn't a research station. It was some kind of hunting ground, and she was the prey. She ran back into the corridor and started looking for a place to hide. Behind her, she could hear new sounds. Something was scratching against metal. Something else was making a low clicking noise. And somewhere in the distance, she heard a sound like wind blowing through empty rooms, but there was no wind in space. Maya found a small supply room and slipped inside, closing the door quietly behind her. She sat in the dark, trying to control her breathing. Her grandfather had taught her about hunting when she was little. He always said that prey animals panicked and made mistakes, but smart prey stayed calm and observed their hunters. Through the door, she could hear the sounds getting closer. The scratching was louder now, like claws on metal. The clicking had turned into a series of rapid taps, almost like Morse code. And that wind sound was definitely moving through the corridors. Maya pressed her ear to the door and listened. She could hear breathing, but it wasn't human breathing. It was too deep, too slow. And there was more than one creature out there. She remembered her grandfather's words. If something wants to hunt you, you need to understand what it is first. Every hunter has weaknesses. Every hunter makes mistakes. Maya waited in the dark supply room for what felt like hours. The sounds outside came and went. Sometimes the creatures seemed to be right outside her door. Other times, they sounded far away. She was learning their patterns. The scratching sound always came first, followed by the clicking. The wind sound usually came last, like it was following the others. They were working together, but they weren't all the same type of creature. When everything was quiet, Maya carefully opened the door and looked out. The corridor was empty, but she could smell something strange in the air. It was a mix of ozone and something organic, like the smell of a forest after rain. She needed to find out more about these hunters. The computer terminal had information about them, but she couldn't stay in that room. It was too exposed. She needed to find a better place to observe and plan. Maya crept through the corridors, staying close to the walls and moving as quietly as possible. She found an air vent near the ceiling and managed to climb up and squeeze inside. From there, she could crawl through the station's ventilation system and see into different rooms without being seen. In one room, she saw something that made her gasp. A creature was standing near a window looking out at the stars. It was tall and thin, with skin that seemed to shift between black and gray. Its arms were too long and its fingers ended in sharp claws. This had to be the umbral stalker. In another room, she saw a group of smaller creatures moving together. They looked like a cross between wolves and insects, with 6 legs and mandibles that clicked together. The razor claw pack. But the third creature was the scariest. She only caught a glimpse of it in a darkened room. It looked almost human, but wrong in every way. Its eyes glowed with a faint purple light, and when it turned its head, Maya felt a strange pressure in her mind, like someone trying to read her thoughts. Maya crawled back through the vents to a safe spot and tried to make sense of what she had seen. These weren't just animals hunting for food. They were intelligent, organized, and they had been doing this for a long time. But Maya was human, and humans had been dealing with predators for thousands of years. Her ancestors had survived ice ages, plagues, and wars. They had learned to think their way out of problems that seemed impossible. Maya Brooks was about to show the galaxy what humans could do when they stopped running and started thinking. Maya spent the next few hours crawling through the air vents watching the hunters. She was learning things that might keep her alive. The umbral stalkers moved like liquid shadow. They could flatten themselves against walls and become almost invisible in dark corners. But Maya noticed they avoided the brightly lit areas. Their eyes seemed to hurt in strong light, and they moved slower when they couldn't hide in shadows. The razor claw pack was different. They were fast and worked together like a team. But Maya saw something interesting when she watched them hunt, maintenance robots. When the pack got separated, they became confused. They would click frantically at each other, trying to regroup. Without the pack, each individual creature seemed much less dangerous. The third hunter was the most troubling. Maya only saw it a few times, always from far away. The Mindrender, as the computer had called it, seemed to be able to sense things that weren't there. It would turn toward empty corridors like it heard something. Sometimes it would stare directly at walls as if it could see through them. Maya was careful never to think directly about the Mindrender when she saw it. Her grandfather had taught her meditation techniques for hunting. "Clear your mind," he used to say. "Don't think about what you're hunting, just observe." From her hiding spot in the vents, Maya also found the station's main computer room. The screens showed information about previous hunts. She read through the data with growing horror. This station had been operating for over 50 years. Thousands of creatures from across the galaxy had been brought here to be hunted. The computer listed success rates for different species. Most prey lasted less than an hour. The longest hunt on record was 6 hours and 12 minutes. That creature had been from a world called Nexus Prime, and it had been considered the most dangerous prey ever brought to the station. Until now. The computer showed a new file with Maya's picture. It listed her species as human, Deathworld, origin. Under threat level, it simply said, unknown. But Maya could see that betting odds had been posted. The hunters were gambling on how long she would last. The shortest bet was 4 minutes. Maya felt anger rising in her chest, but she pushed it down. Anger would make her sloppy. She needed to think. She crawled to a different part of the station and found something very interesting. There was an observation deck where previous hunts had been recorded. Maya accessed the computer and watched videos of other creatures being hunted. Most of them ran. They found hiding places and tried to wait out the hunters. Some fought back. When cornered, a few tried to set traps, but they all did what prey animals do. They acted like prey. Maya watched the hunters' behavior in each video. The umbral stalkers became excited when creatures ran. Their movements became faster and more aggressive. The razor claw pack worked best when chasing panicked prey, and the Mindrender seemed to feed on fear itself. The more afraid the prey became, the stronger the Mindrender appeared to be. Maya closed the files and sat back. Every prey animal that had died in this station had played by the hunter's rules. They had acted like prey, so they had been treated like prey. But what if she didn't run? What if she didn't hide? What if she refused to play their game at all? Maya remembered a documentary she had watched about persistence hunting. Early humans had hunted animals not by being faster or stronger, but by being more persistent. They would follow herds for days, never stopping, never giving up. Eventually, the prey would become exhausted and make mistakes. But Maya was going to try something different. Instead of persistent hunting, she was going to try persistent stillness. She made her way to the central hub of the station. It was the most exposed area possible with bright lights and multiple entrances. If the hunters wanted to find her, this is where they would look first. Maya sat down in the center of the room and began to slow her breathing. Her grandfather had taught her these techniques for hunting deer. Control your heart rate, he had said. Control your breathing. Become part of the environment. But Maya was going to take it further than her grandfather had ever imagined. She closed her eyes and began to meditate. She slowed her heart rate until it was barely above resting. She controlled her breathing until it was silent and steady. She relaxed every muscle in her body until she felt like she was melting into the floor. Then she did something that would confuse every predator instinct in the galaxy. She opened her eyes and stood up, and then she stopped moving completely. Maya had positioned herself in plain sight, but she made herself as still as a statue. She didn't fidget. She didn't shift her weight. She didn't even blink more than necessary. She became the most visible, most obvious target possible. And then she waited. It didn't take long for the hunters to find her. She heard the scratching of claws first, coming closer through the corridors. Then the clicking of the razor claw pack, excited and eager. Finally, the strange wind sound of the Mindrender's movement. They entered the central hub from 3 different directions, surrounding her completely. Maya could see them in her peripheral vision, but she didn't turn her head to look at them directly. The umbral stalker circled her slowly, its shadow form rippling with confusion. It was used to prey that ran or hid. Maya was doing neither. She was just standing there, completely exposed, making no effort to escape. The razor claw pack clicked frantically at each other. They had surrounded their prey, but the prey wasn't acting prey-like. Maya wasn't running, wasn't fighting, wasn't even showing signs of fear. Her heart rate was slow and steady. Her breathing was calm. She smelled wrong to them. The Mindrender approached last, and Maya felt the strange pressure in her mind again. But instead of the panic and terror it usually found in prey minds, Maya's thoughts were clear and empty. She was thinking about mathematical equations her grandfather had taught her, prime numbers, the periodic table, anything except the creatures around her. For the first time in 50 years of hunting, the apex predators of the galaxy were confused. They had never encountered prey that refused to act like prey. Maya's stillness was so complete, so unnatural for a hunted creature, that it triggered something unexpected in their predator brains. Doubt. Maya stood perfectly still for 1 minute, then 2, then 5. The hunters began to show signs of stress. They had been programmed by millions of years of evolution to hunt creatures that ran, that hid, that fought back. Maya was doing none of these things. She was rewriting the rules of the hunt by refusing to participate in it. And for the first time since the station had been built, the hunters didn't know what to do. Maya had been standing still for 10 minutes when she noticed the first crack in the hunter's confidence. The umbral stalker kept circling her, but its movements were becoming erratic. It would start to approach, then stop and back away. Maya could hear it making soft hissing sounds, like it was talking to itself. The creature was built for ambush attacks on moving prey. Maya's complete stillness was breaking its hunting program. The Razorclaw pack was having an even worse time. They were pack hunters who relied on coordinated attacks to bring down fleeing prey. But Maya wasn't fleeing. She wasn't even moving. The pack members began snapping at each other, their clicking sounds turning aggressive. Without a clear target, behavior to respond to, their pack coordination was falling apart. Maya could feel the Mindrender probing her thoughts more frantically. It was used to feeding on fear, panic, and desperation. But Maya's mind remained calm and focused. She kept thinking about simple things: the color of her bedroom walls back on Earth, the taste of her mother's cooking, the sound of rain on the roof of their house. Every time the Mindrender tried to find fear in her mind, it found peaceful memories instead. 15 minutes passed. Maya's legs were starting to ache from standing so still, but she didn't shift her weight. She had learned to ignore discomfort during long hunting trips with her grandfather. Patience is the hunter's greatest weapon, he used to say. Maya was about to prove that patience could be a prey animal's greatest weapon too. The hunters were becoming more agitated. The umbral stalker had stopped circling and was now pacing back and forth in front of Maya. Its shadow form was rippling like water. Showing its frustration, it kept extending its claws, then retracting them, like it wanted to attack but couldn't decide how. The Razorclaw pack had split up. Two of them were clicking angrily at the third, who had started stalking around the room's perimeter. Their pack behavior was completely broken. They were acting like confused individual animals instead of a coordinated hunting unit. The Mindrender was the most disturbed of all. It had moved closer to Maya, and she could feel the psychic pressure in her skull growing stronger. But the harder it pushed, the deeper Maya went into her meditation. She started reciting her multiplication tables in her head, then switched to naming all the planets in the solar system. The creature let out a sound that was almost like frustration, a low, whistling noise that made Maya's teeth ache. It had never encountered a mind that became calmer under psychic pressure instead of more panicked. 20 minutes. Maya had been standing completely still for 20 minutes, and the galaxy's most feared apex predators were starting to look like confused house pets. But Maya wasn't just standing there being still. She was observing everything, every sound, every movement, every behavior pattern. She was learning how these creatures reacted under stress, and she was memorizing the layout of the room from every angle. The umbral stalker was having trouble with the bright lights in the central hub. Its shadow form worked best in darkness, but here it was forced to maintain a more solid shape. Maya could see that it moved more slowly in bright light and seemed to have trouble seeing clearly. The Razorclaw pack was completely disorganized. The three creatures were now in different parts of the room, clicking at each other in what sounded like argument. Maya realized that they had probably never failed to coordinate an attack before. Their confusion was making them angry at each other instead of focused on her. The Mindrender was showing signs of what Maya could only describe as a headache. It kept shaking its head and backing away from her, then approaching again. Her calm, ordered thoughts were apparently painful to a creature that fed on mental chaos. Maya had learned something important. These hunters were perfectly evolved for hunting normal prey, but they had no backup systems for dealing with prey that refused to follow normal prey behavior. She decided it was time to start the second part of her plan. Very slowly, Maya began to move. Not quickly, not in panic, but with deliberate, calculated precision. She took one step to the left, then stopped, and became perfectly still again. The hunter's attention snapped back to her instantly. The umbral stalker crouched, ready to spring. The Razorclaw pack stopped fighting and refocused on Maya. The Mindrender's psychic pressure increased, but Maya didn't run. She didn't show fear. She took another slow, deliberate step, then became still again. This was somehow worse for the hunters than her complete stillness had been. Prey animals moved randomly when they panicked. They moved quickly when they ran. They moved defensively when they fought. Maya was moving like she had a plan. Maya took another step, this one toward the umbral stalker. The creature actually backed away from her, hissing in confusion. In all its years of hunting, nothing had ever walked toward it, calmly and deliberately. The razor claw pack began clicking frantically, trying to coordinate a response to this unprecedented behavior, but their pack tactics were designed for chasing running prey or surrounding defensive prey. They had no protocol for prey that approached them peacefully. Maya turned her head slowly and looked directly at the Mindrender. Instead of fear or anger, she projected calm curiosity at the creature. She thought about how interesting it looked, how she wondered what planet it came from, how she wished she could communicate with it. The Mindrender stumbled backward, as if it had been physically pushed. Curiosity and wonder were apparently toxic to a creature that fed on negative emotions. Maya had been still for 20 minutes, and now she was moving with purpose. She had shown the hunters that she could be completely unpredictable, either motionless as a statue or moving with calm deliberation. She was no longer acting like prey. She was acting like something the hunters had never encountered before, a creature that understood the hunt and refused to participate in it according to their rules. Maya smiled slightly and took another step forward. It was time to show these apex predators what a human could do when she stopped being afraid and started being curious. The hunt was about to become very different. Maya Brooks was no longer the prey. She was becoming something much more dangerous. A human who had figured out the game and decided to change the rules. Maya began moving with the same deliberate precision she had used while standing still. Every step was planned, every turn calculated. She had spent 20 minutes observing the hunters, and now she was going to use everything she had learned. Her first target was the Razor Claw pack because they were the most disorganized. The three creatures had spread out around the room, still clicking at each other in confusion. Maya walked calmly toward the nearest one, and it actually backed away from her. Maya had realized something important during her 20-minute observation. These hunters had never failed before. They had become overconfident and lazy. They expected prey to behave in predictable ways, and they had no experience dealing with failure or confusion. She continued walking toward the razor claw creature until it was pressed against the wall. The other two pack members were clicking, frantically, trying to coordinate a response, but they were too far away to help quickly. Maya did something that no prey animal in the history of the station had ever done. She reached out slowly and touched the creature on what appeared to be its head. The razor claw froze completely. Its clicking stopped. Its compound eyes stared at Maya in what could only be described as shock. Prey didn't touch predators. Prey didn't approach predators voluntarily. Prey certainly didn't pet predators like they were curious about them. Maya studied the creature up close for a moment, noting the texture of its carapace and the way its mandibles worked. Then she stepped back and walked away, leaving the creature pressed against the wall in complete confusion. The other two razor claw creatures rushed to their packmate, clicking frantically. But instead of helping, they seemed to be arguing about what had just happened. Their pack coordination was completely broken now. Maya turned her attention to the umbral stalker. This was going to be trickier because the creature was more dangerous when cornered. But Maya had noticed its weakness. During her observation period, she walked to the wall and placed her hand on a light control panel. The umbral stalker hissed and moved away from her, trying to find shadows to hide in. But Maya began systematically turning on every light in the room. The central hub became as bright as a medical operating room. The umbral stalker's shadow form began to solidify, becoming more physical and less able to phase through objects. Maya could see that the bright light was actually painful for the creature. Its movements became slower and more awkward. Maya began walking in a pattern that forced the umbral stalker to move through the brightest areas of the room. Every time it tried to find a dark corner, Maya would position herself to cut off its escape route. She wasn't chasing it exactly. She was herding it like her grandfather had taught her to herd deer toward better hunting positions. But Maya wasn't hunting the creature to kill it. She was hunting it to exhaust it. The umbral stalker was using energy to maintain its physical form in the bright light, and Maya's patient herding was forcing it to waste even more energy trying to find shadows that didn't exist. After 10 minutes of this careful herding, the umbral stalker was moving much more slowly. Its shadow form was flickering like a broken hologram. Maya could see that it was becoming tired and frustrated. The Mindrender was watching all of this with growing alarm. Maya could feel its psychic probes becoming more desperate, trying to find some fear or panic in her mind that it could amplify. But Maya remained calm and focused, treating the entire situation like a complex puzzle that needed solving. Maya decided to deal with the Mindrender directly. She turned to face the creature and began walking toward it, thinking pleasant thoughts about her childhood on Earth. She remembered summer afternoons in her backyard, the smell of her grandmother's cookies, the feeling of warm sunshine on her face. The Mindrender backed away from her, making that whistling sound of distress. Maya's happy memories were apparently as toxic to it as poison. She kept walking forward, flooding her mind with positive emotions and peaceful thoughts. The creature stumbled and fell backward, its glowing eyes flickering. Maya realized that the Mindrender had been feeding on the fear and panic of its prey for so long that positive emotions were actually harmful to it. It was like forcing a creature that lived on darkness to stare directly into the sun. Maya knelt down next to the fallen Mindrender and looked at it with genuine curiosity and sympathy. She thought about how lonely it must be, feeding on negative emotions all the time. She wondered if it had ever experienced friendship or kindness. The Mindrender let out a sound that was almost like a whimper. Maya's compassionate thoughts were overwhelming its psychic defenses completely. It curled up on the floor, its glowing eyes dim and confused. Maya stood up and looked around the room. The Razor Claw pack was huddled in one corner, clicking softly, to each other like frightened children. The Umbral Stalker was pressed against the far wall, its shadow form barely visible in the bright lights. The Mindrender was still curled up on the floor, apparently unconscious. None of them were trying to hunt her anymore. They were all showing signs of what could only be called trauma. For the first time in their lives, they had encountered something that didn't fear them, didn't run from them, and didn't react to them the way prey was supposed to react. Maya had broken their understanding of how the universe worked. She walked to the central computer terminal and began accessing the station's systems. During her exploration, she had learned how to control the environmental systems, the lighting, and the security doors. Now she was going to use that knowledge. Maya began sealing off sections of the station, separating the hunters from each other. She trapped the confused Razor Claw pack in the corner where they were hiding, sealing the blast doors around them. She created a maze of corridors that led the exhausted Umbral Stalker away from the main areas, using the lighting systems to guide it toward a secure holding area. The Mindrender was still unconscious, so Maya simply locked down the central hub, leaving the creature where it was but preventing it from escaping. Maya had done something unprecedented in the galaxy's history. She had defeated 3 apex predators without killing them, without fighting them, and without running from them. She had simply refused to be prey, and that refusal had completely broken their ability to hunt. The station's computer systems were recording everything, broadcasting the hunt to observers across the galaxy who had bet on Maya's survival. They had expected to see her torn apart in minutes. Instead, they were watching her calmly dismantle the galaxy's most feared hunters through patience, observation, and intelligence. Maya Brooks had just taught the universe a new lesson about humanity. Humans didn't survive by being the strongest or the fastest. They survived by being the most adaptable, the most persistent, and the most willing to change the rules when the old rules didn't work. The hunt was over, and Maya had won without firing a shot or throwing a punch. She had won by thinking. Maya sat in the station's control room, watching the communication channels light up with incoming messages. News of what had happened was spreading across the galaxy faster than she had expected. The betting networks had gone into chaos when Maya survived the first hour. By the time she had neutralized all 3 hunters, the galactic communication grid was overloaded with emergency broadcasts. No one knew how to classify what they had just witnessed. Maya activated the station's emergency beacon and sent a simple message. "This is Maya Brooks, human, requesting pickup from Research Station Kepler 442b. I am unharmed and ready for transport home." While she waited for rescue, Maya explored more of the station's databases. What she found made her both sad and angry. The hunting preserve had been operating for decades, and thousands of intelligent creatures had died here for the entertainment of galactic society's elite. The worst part was the betting records. Creatures from across the galaxy had been kidnapped from their homes and brought here to die, while wealthy aliens placed bets on how long they would survive. Maya's survival had cost the betting houses millions of galactic credits, but Maya had done more than just survive. She had recorded everything. During her 20 minutes of standing still and throughout the hunt that followed, Maya had been using her personal data recorder to document everything. She had evidence of the illegal hunting preserve, the kidnapping, operations, and the entire galactic betting network that supported it. She uploaded all of this data to the emergency beacon and broadcast it across every communication channel she could access. Within hours, the story was being told on news networks from Earth to the Andromeda Galaxy. Maya heard ships approaching the station before she saw them. The first to arrive was a Galactic Council enforcement vessel, followed by several news ships, and what appeared to be a human diplomatic transport. The Council enforcers boarded the station with weapons drawn, expecting to find a crime scene. Instead, they found Maya sitting calmly in the control room, reading a book she had found in the station's library. "Are you injured?" the lead enforcer asked. He was a tall, blue-skinned alien with 4 arms and compound eyes. "No, I'm fine," Maya replied. "But you might want to check on the hunters. I think they're experiencing some psychological trauma." The enforcer looked confused. "The hunters are traumatized? What about you?" Maya shrugged. "I'm a little tired, and I'm hungry, but otherwise I'm okay. This whole thing was basically just a problem-solving exercise." The enforcement team found the 3 apex predators exactly where Maya had left them. The Razor Claw pack was huddled together in their sealed section, making soft clicking sounds that the universal translators interpreted as, "It's not supposed to do that," repeated over and over. The Umbral Stalker had found the darkest corner of its containment area and was curled up like a scared animal. When the enforcers approached with lights, it actually whimpered. The Mindrender was awake, but completely unresponsive. It stared at the ceiling with blank eyes, occasionally making soft whistling sounds. According to the medical scanners, its brain showed patterns similar to severe depression. "What did you do to them?" the lead enforcer asked Maya. "I didn't do anything to them," Maya replied. "I just refused to be what they expected me to be. Apparently that was enough to break them." The human diplomatic ship carried Maya's parents and a team of psychologists who wanted to understand how she had survived. Maya found herself explaining her strategy over and over to increasingly amazed audiences. "You stood still for 20 minutes?" her mother asked, hugging her tightly. "That was your plan?" "Part of it," Maya said. "I figured out that they had never encountered prey that didn't act like prey. So I acted like something else instead." "What did you act like?" one of the psychologists asked. Maya thought about it. For a moment. "I acted like a human. I observed, I adapted, and I solved the problem." The news networks couldn't get enough of the story. Videos of Maya's 20-minute vigil were watched by billions of beings across the galaxy. Experts tried to analyze her techniques, but most of them missed the point. Maya hadn't used any special human abilities. She hadn't been stronger or faster than the hunters. She had simply refused to play by their rules, and that refusal had been so unprecedented that it broke their ability to function. Within a week, every hunting preserve in the galaxy had been shut down. The betting networks collapsed when it became clear that humans, and possibly other Deathworld species, couldn't be reliably predicted or controlled. The galactic community's attitude toward humanity changed overnight. Humans had been seen as a minor species from a dangerous planet. Now they were seen as something much more concerning, a species that could completely redefine any situation they found themselves in. Maya returned to Earth as a hero, but she didn't feel heroic. She felt like she had simply solved a problem the way her grandfather had taught her, by staying calm, observing carefully, and thinking instead of panicking. The psychological evaluation of the 3 hunters became a famous study in xenopsychology. All 3 species had been apex predators on their homeworlds for millions of years. They had evolved perfect hunting strategies that had never failed them, until they met a human who simply refused to be hunted. The Razor Claw pack was eventually rehabilitated, and returned to their home world. But they never hunted again. They became herbivores, spending their time in peaceful group activities and showing signs of what could only be described as philosophical contemplation. The umbral stalker was treated for severe anxiety and developed what appeared to be agoraphobia. It only felt safe in very small, very dark spaces, and it startled at any sudden movement or sound. The Mindrender never fully recovered. It spent the rest of its life in a specialized care facility, unable to process any thoughts except peaceful, happy ones. Doctors said it had been overwhelmed by Maya's positive emotions and could no longer access the negative feelings it needed to survive. Maya went back to school and finished her education. She studied xenopsychology and became an expert in interspecies communication. But she always remembered the lesson she had learned on Research Station Kepler 442b. Sometimes the best way to win a fight was to refuse to fight at all. Sometimes the best way to survive was to change the rules, and sometimes standing perfectly still for 20 minutes was the most dangerous thing you could do. Years later, when other humans found themselves in dangerous situations with hostile aliens, they remembered Maya's story. They remembered that humans didn't have to be the strongest or the fastest to survive. They just had to be human, adaptable, persistent, and willing to solve problems in ways that no one else had ever imagined. Maya Brooks had stood still for 20 minutes and changed the galaxy's understanding of what it meant to be human. She had shown the universe that humanity's greatest weapon wasn't technology or violence. It was the simple refusal to accept that any problem was unsolvable. The galaxy learned to respect humans not because they were dangerous, but because they were unpredictable. And in a universe full of apex predators, unpredictability was the ultimate survival trait. Maya had taught them all that lesson by doing the one thing no prey animal in galactic history had ever done. She had stood perfectly still, and in doing so, she had changed everything.